We all know what character fusions are, or at least I hope so. I mean, fusions are in multiple popular medias like Dragon Ball, Steven Universe, Digimon, and so on. I will say personally I haven't seen it utilized a lot in recent media, and I think it would be really cool to see it in more mainstream places. But for now, we have artists who happily do their own thing, who are the ones that are making these fusions in fan content and fan spaces. Which is what we're doing here today with one of my absolute favorite IPs, Cookie Run Kingdom. But before we get started, jingle jingle jingle, jingle jangle. First, I want to thank you all for clicking on this video, and I hope you watched it to the very end. I also want to take this moment to share my link tree to all of my other platforms like Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Tumblr, and of course my Ko-Fi, where I have a fundraiser currently open for free Cookie Run keychains with all of the details listed on the fundraiser page. So if you want your keychain, you go donate $5 or more to claim yours. Alongside this, I also have commissions ranging in style and a price and adoptable OCs. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and be sure to check out all my other videos on my channel where I do videos just like this one, and I also game too. Alright, you can zone out again because now it's time for the topic of the video. I'm just going to explain as I go to save us all some time, and to begin, I chose to fuse Dark Cacao with Mystic Flower. I started all of these fusions by sketching on paper, to which I then lined on my iPad and proceeded to color and render from there. When deciding on how I was going to go about this fusion, I had to first, like all the others, thoroughly understand the original designs on their own. Dark Cacao wears a lot of heavy armor, has long flowing hair, dark complexion, and he carries this massive sword that contains a soul gem. However, on the other end of things, Mystic Flower is pale in complexion and clothing, donning light and flowy attire and a regal calmness about her. Fusing these two actually works well in terms of personality. They both are very direct, serious, and curt. However, their clothes don't mix all that easily. So I decided to take the main attributes of Cacao's armor and combine it with the dress skirt of Mystic Flower to go for that really lovely combo of light and heavy, strong in more than just muscle. Then of course I kept the sword. I felt it was just too iconic to remove, and so I mostly kept the original design of Dark Cacao with a few Mystic Flower elements, along with her veil and ribbons she wears to continue this almost ethereal look about the fusion. Now Dark Cacao's hair is also very iconic, so I kept that virtually the same. However, I gave this fusion vitiligo because I couldn't bear to part with the dark complexion, but also since Mystic Flower does that thing where she virtually kills everyone by returning them back to flower, I got this idea of a flower speckle look and opted for vitiligo, which I think ultimately makes this design more like a fusion and less like a secret love child. I also gave this fusion Mystic Flower's eyes since the design heavily favored Dark Cacao. Of course, coloring was virtually the same. The armor is dark purple, the veil is also a pale beige, but I made sure to lighten the entire design so it wasn't too dark to, again, dilute the heavy Dark Cacao favoring. And I won't lie, I did struggle for the coloring on this one a lot. I just couldn't really get it to look right at times, but I think eventually it got it to a good final design. However, I think I could have done better with the rendering, but I think the rendering looking so muddy is a result of an overly detailed design that's more top-heavy, because the closer we get to the feet, the less detail, and I wish I could have found a better solution for that, but overall, I'm quite fond of this design. I think I did fairly well, and before we move on, we must give this fusion a name, and for the sake of being able to say it quickly, we shall call her Dark Flower. So this one was difficult since, well, the designs are polar opposites. White Lily is very light, feminine, and fairy-like, whereas Silent Salt is just a brute and metal. So how in the world was I supposed to evenly distribute these attributes? Well, somehow I figured it out after just going with it with no other thoughts. I knew from the get-go that I would keep the braid and cape from White Lily, and I would keep the mask of Silent Salt with the intention of this fusion leaning more masculine. I ended up actually making what could only be described as a fairy guard or soldier of some sort. A long tattered cape draped over armor that I intended to be thick like leather so it could flow at the ends, along with White Lily's arm wrappings and a combo of their weapons. I kept the soul gem in the same place as Silent Salt's because it just had better harmony in the design, and I was able to keep the spear sword thing pretty much the same, with the soul gem on White Lily's staff now being just leaves on this new weapon rather than it being on the staff. Honestly, the design came together on its own. The real struggle was soon to come, the coloring. Originally, and I forgot to mention this earlier, I had planned on literally mixing all the colors of these characters and just using the combos, but it ended up looking so green and brown for most of these that it was just bland and honestly kind of ugly. I wasn't getting fusion vibes, so for this design, I simply toned down White Lily's colors to be darker and more on the purple hue scale. So we ended up with lots of purple and bluish green tones that just look so good. I'm genuinely in love with this color choice I made here. The rendering came easy too. I had really gone past the hard part of this design. Honestly, the only part I don't like is the armor, and that's no fault of my own, I just don't like Silent Salt's armor. I hope the rendering reveals more of this in his Beast event so that he looks better, or maybe the armor will be changed in general, but right now I'm just not a fan. I need to see fan art or a cosplay that really takes some artistic liberty to really understand the appeal of the design. And I'm not claiming to be an all-knowing artist. I have my preferences and you have yours. I'm no better than anyone and we're all at our own levels, but again, we can all agree that what makes us human individuals is our ability to form independent opinions based on our own interests and understanding. So if I say I think Silent Salt's armor is a bit chopped, I can say that and hopefully not get stoned for it. I think it's just hard for me to see since the whole design is just completely black and there's no true lighting on the design we've seen so far. I just figured such a cool mask would be paired with a more intense armor design, but what do I know. Anyways, I ended up loving this design so much that I can look past the armor thing, and I think this is my favorite design. Much like the last fusion, however, we must name this one too, and I think I'm gonna go with something like Silent Lily. I could say white salt, but nothing here is white or salty, so we're gonna go with my first option. Now this is a design that I really couldn't get down. Both Burning Spice and Golden Cheese wear the bare minimum. They dress for the heat. So fusing their fashion was both hard and easy because there was nothing to fuse. However, I ended up getting away with it and I like it a lot. Every time I look at this design, I think it reflects Golden Cheese more, but the longer I look, the more I realize the obvious elements of Burning Spice in there, which I'm very proud of. So aside from the clothes, which I virtually just kept Golden Cheese's general attire and added bits of Burning Spice, I kept Burning Spice's skin patterns and I combined the two's jewelry. I even combined their eyes and makeup with a little freedom. And I kept the thingies on the headpiece. I'm not sure what they are, but I saw somewhere that Burning Spice's original design was reminiscent of a centipede, and so they're antennas or something, but I'm gonna pretend I never saw that because ew. They're just a funky thing he wears, and it's cool, we like it. Now, the hair was pretty simple, and the main thing I intended on doing when starting this design was making it long and wild, very fiery. I also made sure that the color wasn't black, since I felt the need to make this design warm in an orange and yellow sense. And that's exactly what I did with the hair. It kind of looks like it's made of Cheez-Its. Anyway, the most difficult part was combining the weapons. I wanted to keep the axe design because I felt like there was more favoring of Golden Cheese here and I wanted to add some more Burning Spice elements. However, I had to keep it relative to her weapon as well. So I just made the axe a bit thinner and added cheese hole designs to the blades and kept the little pattern as much as I could without it being too much. And I even put a turquoise gem in the middle rather than whatever the original was. I actually really like this design. Burning Spice is in my top 3 CRK character tier list, so I had to do him justice as much as I could without making this fusion straight up fan art. Regardless, good design, methinks. And this fusion name will be easy: Spicy Cheese. Right now, I have the craziest obsession with Eternal Sugar. I save so much fan art of her, and I love Pink and Soft Things, which is her design and her voice and But hilariously, I had yet to draw her until this moment, and it's not even fully fan art of her. But I've stared at her enough to know exactly what I was going to do with this design. In the same vein as Dark Flower, we have the top being armor, and the bottom being a skirt, which this is accurate for Hollyberry in general, but I replaced her skirt with Eternal Sugar's skirt and made her barefoot since she has this ethereal look about her rather than a rough and tumble warrior. I think this fusion is still intense though, definitely a hard opponent in battle. I kept Eternal Sugar's demon-like wings, but I took away her angel wings. I felt like it made the design too complicated, which I've been accused of before on other videos, so I just opted to not put them in at all. And honestly, I actually like how this looks, especially when you consider her top-heavy armor and her hair and shield. It would just be too much and too many big things. So the armor is virtually the same aside for a few minor changes such as the heart-shaped glove cutouts and the holly berries on the shoulders rather than in her hair. And speaking of the hair, I kept Eternal Sugar alive in this part with the exception of Hollyberry's buns, braids, and bangs to frame this fusion's face rather than the crown, especially since the soul gem is in the shield and in the shape of the way it was in the crown. Did that make sense? I feel like that didn't make sense. Anyways, I took the diamond thingies off of the bangs, however, since there was already so much going on in that neck chest area. I just felt it wasn't necessary and it would make it too complex. The eyes are pretty much just Eternal Sugar's with a bit more sharp edge to them. And then finally we have the halo, which I found to be a cute finishing touch. There was no other thought behind that, I just wanted to keep it there. Overall, this is one of my favorites. I love this design, and yes, it's mostly because it's pink. It's time to name her. And since she looks like a sweet but deadly angel warrior, we are gonna call her Eternal Berry. Did I purposely save the best characters for last? Yes, I did. Like Shadowmilk's original design, this fusion is complex. And that's his fault. He should have thought about that before showing up dressed in 50 layers of different colors and fabrics and textures, while Pure Vanilla just put on his little cloak and hat and called it a day. Okay, so what did I do here? Well, I had this idea that this fusion would be very ethereal, almost like the Fount of Knowledge, but with Pure Vanilla's influence. I feel like this fusion is incredibly intelligent and constantly at peace. Nothing troubles him aside from Shadowmilk being a goober in that shared brain of theirs. This fusion definitely has that dry joke delivery, but the jokes and stories are hilarious, so the delivery is part of the charm. But anyway, I kept Pure Vanilla's hat since it's so iconic, and I just added some little details on it for fun to keep some dynamics in here. I actually kept the design fairly close to PV's original with the chocolate undercoat, white overcoat, blonde hair, chocolate drip on the side, but then we have our Shadowmilk elements. One sleeve being gone rather than a different color, the ruffled collar, the bodysuit, the diamonds on the knees, the cape, and of course the soul gem. Now the soul gem is noticeably in Shadowmilk's formation rather than Pure Vanilla's. That's because I firmly believe that Shadowmilk is just more powerful than Pure Vanilla, and still has some pretty intense effects on him even now in their fused form. Anyway, so I kept the soul gem upside down and I lined it in gold with these curled bits to kind of resemble both of their designs in that regard. I also added this belt thing. It's not really a belt. Anyway, I think it added some definition to the design and evened out the colors. I also made the eyes just a combo of one being Pure Vanilla's and the other being Shadowmilk's, which it hilariously just makes this more reminiscent of the Fount of Knowledge. I also wanted to point out the blue tips on the hair, again, more Shadowmilk in there. Then my personal favorite part, the skin. Now, unlike Eternal Berry, these two are complete opposites in color scheme, so I wasn't able to just find a healthy mix of the two like I did with that one. It was just mostly pink. Since these two are opposites in color schemes, reversible even, finding an equal complexion was a bit of a challenge, and I ended up using my original plan to mix the colors for this one, and it came out with this really pretty sea glass color that just looks so nice for the both of them. It's warm and still blue, therefore equal. It's literally mixed, so that's not me jumping through hoops either. The design is so out there that it's almost jarring to look at, but after staring at this fusion for a long while, I'm still very pleased and in love with this design. I think he looks fantastic. And of course now, we need to name him. And thanks to my Twitch stream, I already did this. We have that name now. He shall be named Pure Milk. I know, very original. And that's all the Cookie Run Kingdom Beasts and Ancient Fusions. I had a lot of fun making this video. It's been a minute since I've just goofed off and done something completely different from my usual art content. And thank you to Tots who inspired me to make this video, because I know you're probably going to see this at some point. But anyways, let me know what you think of these in the comment. Remain respectful and kind, otherwise you'll be sent to the ranch dimension. And in the meantime, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Check out my Linktree and support my other platforms, which are completely free, and I'm very active on most of them. And of course, remember to check out my Ko-Fi, where I have commissions and adoptables, and especially my Cookie Run Kingdom keychain fundraiser. We are really close to our goal, and I'm super excited to send these keychains out once I get the funding to outsource them. And finally, check out my other videos and give them some love as well. But until then, thank you all so much for watching, and I cannot wait to see you in the next one.